Hello and welcome to YABasic, the podcast where we talk about YA fantasy and avoid our adult responsibilities. I'm one of your hosts, Danny, and I read fairy tale retellings so I can find my Prince Charming.
And I'm your other host, Deadly, and I love a gritty retelling.
In this episode of YABasic, we will be discussing A Court of Thorn and Roses, The Lunar Chronicles, A Curse So Dark and Lonely, and a lot of other fairy tale retellings. So you might hear some spoilers, just a heads up, but they will be mild.
So this week is a very special episode. We have something very exciting at the end of the episode for you. YABasic's first interview.
Ooh, yes, really exciting interview. But we are very excited. We've known about this for so long, and we've just wanted to talk about it so much, and we've been so excited. So yes, you'll finally find out what that is today in today's episode. But first, we're going to discuss fairy tale retellings in YA fantasy because it's a classic. It's a classic theme that we see a lot, and we just thought, you know what, it's time we discussed it, and this is the perfect opportunity because we have a very special guest.
Yes, absolutely. I think fairy tale retellings are a really great way for us to kind of get to know an author's style, and for us to we know in theory what a story is going to entail, but we don't know how they're going to twist the characters, how they're going to twist the story, how they're going to get us. So I think they're a really interesting genre, I guess, within YA to read, because I just find them extremely compelling.
Yeah, I agree. I just think sometimes you feel very connected to a story, but you don't always want to read the same story constantly from the same point of view. So I think fairy tale retellings are just a really fun, fresh way of getting to know your favorite characters and their favorite stories all over again. I just think it's really fun, and I've read so many over the years, and I am yet to find one that I have thoroughly disliked. So
yeah, same.
Let's get to talking about it. I think we start with the classic, the one that everyone's talking about, A Court of Thorn and Roses.
Yeah, I mean,
if you didn't know, if you didn't know, A Court of Thorn and Roses, or ACOTAR for short, is a YA. The first book is a YA fantasy retelling of Beauty and the Beast. Beauty and the Beast is quite a classic story for people to retell. I've read another one, like I mentioned at the start of the episode, A Curse So Dark and Lonely.
Yeah, I mean, Beastly, that was really big in the
early
2000s.
Yeah. It's just I guess Twilight.
Yeah, that would count, I feel.
That's kind of like a Beauty and the Beast retelling. But ACOTAR is really the one that's most popular at the moment. We've thoroughly enjoyed the ACOTAR series, not just for the fairy tale retelling, but because of the spiciness as well.
Content,
But you know what? This is not what this episode's about. If you want to hear about all the spice, go listen to our Court of Silver Flames episode where we talk in depth about that. But yes, the classic fairy tale retelling. So obviously Feyre is Belle.
Yeah.
And then you have one of the characters, Tamlin. He is the Beast in air quotes.
Yeah, air quotes.
I really like in ACOTAR. So if you haven't read ACOTAR, maybe
skip forward a little bit, but
But in ACOTAR, they have that instead of all of the characters turning into furniture, they wear masks, which is kind of a different take on it because, obviously in the classic Disney film or the classic, I don't know, I've never actually read the actual classic Beauty and the Beast story.
I don't think I have either. I feel like I only know it through retellings, which is really funny.
Yeah, I only really know
other things I have read, but Beauty and the Beast, I guess because again, the Disney films are kind of what we reference quite a lot within popular culture for kind of our benchmark of what fairy tales are. And I know Disney definitely Disneyfies them, if that's a
Yeah,
uh,
extra fairy
yeah.
tales
So
and
they make them less kind of gruesome. And then I guess YA not always has them as gruesome, but kind of makes them sexier? Question mark.
yeah, I agree. But
Like
that I
yeah,
feel like that's the whole appeal of
yeah,
YA.
completely.
That it makes it more desirable for teenagers to want to be a part of. So yeah, in that respect, sex sells. So
Yeah,
yeah,
completely.
but
Um,
yeah, I really like that in Akatar that Sarah. I don't know. Did I like it? There wasn't really anybody there apart from
apart from
Lucian,
Lucian and like that one maid.
the wood woman. I
Yeah,
don't know
the
her
wood
name. I'm so
woman.
sorry. I'm gonna get hate for that, but I can't remember her name.
We read it a long
Yeah,
time
and they're all
ago.
wearing masks. Oh yeah, we read. We have the original covers.
Yeah, that's our flex. You could tell at first I didn't know. I went into it not knowing that it was a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and by the end I was like, "Oh, this is Beauty and the Beast."
No, I didn't either. And then I said to you, I think I vividly remember messaging you about it, Deadly, and was like, is this Beauty and the Beast? I think it's when she first gets there and
Yeah,
she's like at the table, I was like, is this Beauty and the Beast? Because like this is so obvious
yeah,
that it is.
completely.
I think it was
Um,
maybe the library
yeah, oh, the library
or the gallery. Did they change it to a gallery?
and like obviously when she first meets him, he is literally a beast.
Yes. Oh
Um,
yeah.
so it kind of it definitely works in that favor. And that's what I think is really interesting about Court of Thorn and Roses is it kind of tells the whole fairy tale in the first book,
Yeah.
and then has become its own story in its own right, in its own kind of
World. Yeah.
yeah, completely.
Absolutely. I get that.
I think it's different with some things. Like, for example, we mentioned we're going to be discussing the Lunar Chronicles. With that, it kind of each book is a fairy tale.
Yeah, it's
It's
a
its
different fairy
own
tale.
retelling, but within it there is kind of an overarching plot which weaves through. And I don't know if we've spoken about. We have briefly touched on Lunar Chronicles before, but
Yeah.
those books are phenomenal. Like
Yes.
they completely twist the fairy tales on their heads in the most creative and kind of dystopian future uh, way, and all the characters are so developed and interesting. And oh, those books lift my
Yeah,
heart.
they're it's very diverse characters as well. If you're not sure what
Yes.
we're talking about, by the way, if you're not sure what the Lunar Chronicles are, the first book in the Lunar Chronicles series is Cinder, and it's written by Marissa Meyer.
Yeah.
There's four. There's Cinder, Scarlet, Cress,
Press.
and Winter,
Winter.
and then there's two novellas as well. But we love those books. Obviously, you can tell by the name that the first book is a Cinderella retelling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it focuses on four different fairy tales. So you've got Cinderella,
No Red
Red
Riding
Riding
Hood.
Hood,
Rapunzel.
Rapunzel, and Snow White. They really do twist the classics on their
Oh
head.
my
It's not
god.
like you're reading because like, so if you're thinking, oh, Cinderella isn't my favorite, read it
Yeah.
because it's just like she makes it interesting again. And I think that's something I like about it. It's like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the classic princess, oh, she's saved by a prince, like gets her out of trouble. That's a bit dated and like
Yeah.
out like overdone and like boring. But like these books are a perfect example of taking a classic and making it modern and making it fun and exciting, but still keeping the theme
Mm-hmm.
of the story of the first one, but just completely making it your own.
Yeah.
And that's what we love about the Lunar Chronicles, I
Yeah,
think.
honestly, I those books are kind of my. I always forget about them, and then whenever anyone's asking me for like good, solid YA to read, I'm like, Lunar Chronicles is
Yes.
gonna have your back because it has all the good tropes, has all the great like book boyfriend
Yeah.
characteristics. It's got something for everyone, and it's and they're so funny and just and but also will
They are
make you
funny,
they'll
yeah.
also make you really sad and oh everything about YA. literally.
Yeah, it's got romance, adventure, it's sci-fi, it's fantasy, it's everything you could ever want and more from a book, a YA fantasy book anyway. It's fantastic. I love it. Um another kind of like subgenre of like the like fairy tale retelling, I guess would be like legend retellings as well,
Yes.
because they're not technically fairy tales because like it's legend, so like it's sort of based on truth.
Yeah.
We were literally just discussing this before we came on the podcast. If you haven't read Legendborn,
Oh my god.
it's an Arthurian like retelling. So it's like King Arthur, Knights of the
Oh.
Round Table retelling modern. But it has a black female main character, and the representation in that book is like phenomenal.
Oh
Like
my god.
it's so good. Like amazing. Like LGBTQ plus representation, people of color. It's just fantastic. Like I can't. Like Deadly's currently reading it.
Yeah,
I read it.
I'm about halfway through. I'm listening to it on Audible. Shout out. Not spawned. Could be.
Not for free, Deadly.
But yeah, and it's really amazing because it's kind of written in the deep south of America, and the people reading it have really kind of deep twangs. And I was just speaking to Danny about it, and I was like, does one of the characters have they them pronouns? Like, and it's just not even like a fuss about
Yeah.
it. It's just that's what their pronouns are.
Yeah, and I remember when I read that, I was like smiling to myself because I was like, he didn't even make a fuss. Like it's natural. Like that's how it should be.
It's so good.
I loved it. But yes, that is if you really like, if you like Merlin, or if you're like a fan of like Arthurian legend. Oh my god, I could not recommend like Legendborn enough.
Yeah.
Like it's written by a woman of color as well, so it just keeps ticking all the boxes of a great YA fantasy book that you just have to read. Like I could not. It's so good. And then like another like fantasy retelling, not fantasy, sorry, like legend would also kind of be like Percy Jackson, that series.
Yes, absolutely.
That's like the classic, like the classic Greek gods and
it's
mythology.
like folklore. It's like it's part of mythology. Yeah.
And then you've like Greek mythology seems to be a very popular theme at the moment with YA. So you've got like lore.
We've got Ariadne and Circe, which is not YA, it's more adult, but that it kind of tips into YA a little bit. And I think Greek mythology is referenced a lot. Oh my god, shall we? No, we're not going to talk about Song of Achilles. But there is. I'm just looking over at my bookshelf actually, and like it is such a big thing within YA, and like even something I find really interesting and compelling is I have always had an affinity for villains, and I think that villains are really such complex and fantastic characters. And with the books like The Sea Witch and Sea Witch Rising, which is a duology, it tells the story of Ursula, but kind of from the traditional Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale version, and also that she's the heroine, not the villain. And those books are absolutely fantastic. They also have some good book boyfriends in them, which we love. And I think it's always interesting when they can flip something on its head, and kind of get you to question these characters that you've thought about in one way for so long.
That actually, just now you just said that reminds me of another Little Mermaid retelling that I love, which is To Kill a Kingdom by Alexandra Christo. Holy crap. That book is like phenomenal. Like it's like Little Mermaid, but make it enemies to lovers and make Ariel the most badass. Like she's like a sea witch. Like she's a bit like Ursula. But it's so good. It's so good. Like obviously enemies to lovers. I'm a big advocate of that.
It's on my TBR, my to be read pile.
You would love it. It's so good. But that's like a fun, like so refreshing. Like I'm not gonna lie, The Little Mermaid is not my favorite. Like it's not my favorite fairy tale. Like it just isn't. But like I read that and was like hooked. Like it's like bringing a new life to like outdated or just like classic books that need just some love and attention. Like the story is fantastic, but it needs to be modernized. And I just think it's a perfect thing to do for YA, because you're teaching like a younger generation about these fairy tales, but in a way that's more accepting and modern and just works a lot better.
That's why I definitely, to reference Sea Witch again, which is I really love those books and no one talks about them, and so I'm salty, so I try and talk about them all I can.
Salty.
Didn't even plan that. A lot of times retellings will make the magic a lot more have a cost or a lot scarier. So for example, in Sea Witch, light spoilers, not really, it's in the first chapter, for a mermaid to go back to the sea to get her tail again, they have to use the blood of a human. They have to kill a human and put it all over their legs, and then they get their tail back.
Okay.
But usually it's the one they love. So Ariel would have to kill Eric to become a mermaid again.
Right, yeah.
And Ursula, the character, she's obviously an advocate for that, and and she starts off as a human, and it's so good. But I think that's something that we really liked in the book we're going to talk about with our author guest, is that magic in this book comes at a price, definitely.
Yeah, the book, should we just say what the book is?
Yeah, oh my god.
So we are very excited to announce that the next part of the podcast, we are going to be talking to Brandie June, who is the author of Goldspun, and it's her debut YA fantasy novel.
And it is fan-flippin-tastic. We both loved it.
So good. We literally both loved it. Like, I read it so fast, like in 2 days. It was so good.
Yeah. And then I had to catch up, and I was like, oh, I'm loving this. Oh, this is amazing. Messaging Danny like every chapter.
Yeah. So Goldspun is a retelling of Rumpelstiltskin, which I don't know, it's like a classic fairy tale that I grew up reading. My mum used to read that to me when I was younger, my Ladybird book. And yeah, Brandie does such a good job of like making it like exciting and putting her own twist on things. We loved it.
Yeah, the characters are so fleshed out and real. And yeah, we hope you pick up the book, and I hope our interview is pretty spoiler free, so you should be good to listen to it and then get excited and order the book for yourself, and come on this magical journey with us.
Yes, so segue into the interview with Brandie that is coming now. Okay, so today we have a very exciting guest with us. It is Brandie June, and she's the author of Goldspun, which is a new book that's just come out, and it's a retelling of the tale of Rumpelstiltskin. Deadly and I really enjoyed the book, and we are here to ask Brandie a couple of questions about her book and her reading habits, and we're really excited to have her with us today.
Yeah, so just to start off, hello, and we've got some quick fire questions. So first question is, what's your favourite YA book?
I'd go with Spinning Silver. I know some people say it's adult, some say it's YA. I think it leans YA. But...
It's kind of that new adult in the middle, kind of. Yeah, definitely.
We can never really tell which one's which, so we can...
I've read some YA and I'm like, wow, that's dark.
Yeah.
And the funny thing with Spinning Silver is I had actually already written Goldspun. I was like, ooh, another Rumpelstiltskin retelling was coming out at the time I was finishing writing up Goldspun, so I was very excited to.
Yeah, you guess you never know until it suddenly all happens, and it's like, oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, next question. Do you fold pages or do you use a bookmark when you read?
Bookmark. I never fold pages.
Good.
Correct
That's
answer.
The correct answer.
I will say my bookmarks oftentimes it's usually like the receipt from the bookstore.
Yeah, same.
That is the best bookmark.
I have a huge collection of bookmarks, and I always end up just using the receipt.
Oh my god, I relate to that so hard. I'm like, I have all these beautiful bookmarks. Why am I just using this ratty old receipt? But who is your book crush?
Oh, I have so many of them.
Good.
Definitely the Starrett King from Spinning Silver. Also, Mr. Darcy is a classic.
Oh, Mr. Darcy. I have many a tote with I Heart Darcy on it.
Yeah, the unhealthy yet still kind of attractive Darkling from The Shadow and Bone.
Oh, the Darkling.
We love the Darkling on this podcast. Do not worry.
And it's like, I know he's not healthy, but I just want to like take a cooking class with him and show him that, you know, he can do more than just take over the world.
We all love a bad boy, so we can't blame you, Brandie. Next question. What is your favourite book trope?
Enemies to lovers.
Oh, yes.
Fantastic.
Perfect.
The best.
That's our favourite as well.
I love that, because even starting out, there's a lot of passion, because hate has a lot of passion. So you start out with a lot of conflict, a lot of passion, and you see this, you know, this huge arc, because there has to be for that change to happen. So I think that's why I love the trope.
Yeah, it is hands down the best book trope.
Perfect. The perfect trope.
And final of the quick round questions, paper book or e-reader?
Paper book, but I am also a big fan of audiobooks.
Oh, yes. That is 100%. I have this year become such a fan of audiobooks. I love them.
Yeah. Deadly's really a massive advocate for audiobooks, and I just can't get on it. I don't know why. I think I just prefer having a physical. I think it's the voices, you know. It is the voices for me.
Yeah, you have to find good voices.
Yeah. The narrator's a lot. For me, I had a really long commute to work. And so listening to audiobooks in the car kept me from going insane. I live in Los Angeles, so traffic is the worst.
Yeah.
And even now, I work full-time as a marketing director on films, and I have my career as an author. So usually I'll listen to audiobooks when I'm doing chores or walking the dog, because when I have the time to just sit down, I'm like, oh, that's the time I actually have to write something.
Oh my god, you're burning the candle at both ends.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now we're going to start with the actual interview about Goldspun, which we are really excited about. We really both loved the book. We had a call we discussed it the other day, and we absolutely loved it. Yeah, it was really, really good, and especially for your like debut YA novel, it was fantastic. We really loved it.
Oh, it makes me so happy. This story has been in my heart for so many years. It's both exhilarating and a bit terrifying now sharing it with the world. So hearing people like it just warms my heart.
Yeah, we absolutely adored it. We were gushing. We were on the call for like 2 hours, just like dissecting it and being like, it's amazing. Oh my god.
Aww.
Yeah, we loved it.
Yeah. So I think the first question that we had was, what was it about the tale of Rumpelstiltskin that made you want to write Goldspun?
It started almost as a lark. I was participating in NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month, and gives people the challenge of write 50,000 words in the month of November. And so one year I decided to challenge myself to write a short story for every letter of the alphabet relating to a fairy tale or a myth. And I didn't get to all 26 stories, but for R, I chose Rumpelstiltskin and decided to give myself the challenge of flipping the script on it and imagining the story if Rumpelstiltskin was the hero instead of the villain and what that would look like.
Yeah.
And I had so much fun doing it, but I realized at the end of that, I'm like, this short story needs more. The characters need a lot more, and they need a lot more depth. So in the short story, Rumpelstiltskin's kind of the hero, and then with Goldspun, I was like, now I want to pull him into somewhere a little more in between. I want not maybe the hero, maybe the villain. We still mysterious, but not this awful character that the original story had him.
We were saying we really like morally grey characters, and we saw a lot of. I don't know if you've read the book The Cruel Prince by Holly Black.
I love that trilogy.
Yeah, we love it. And we were like, oh, we were like, oh, it's like we loved that the characters were morally grey, like Jude and Carden. And that's something that we wanted to see more of. And we spoke about that a bit on YABasic before, that we love like not knowing how we should feel about characters, but enjoying reading about them. And I think that's something that we enjoyed about Goldspun.
Yeah, as you could tell from reading Goldspun, I adore morally great characters. And that was really the basis of where I started the retelling for Goldspun. Is I looked at each of the three characters, the king, the miller's daughter, and Rumpelstiltskin, and wanted to examine how to make all of them empathetic and characters you could root for even if you didn't agree with their choices.
Yeah.
And especially the miller's daughter, who doesn't even get a name in the original. God, in a story that's all about how important names are. And she's so sweet and so passive. Her jerk dad says she can do something, and the jerk king locks her up. So with Goldspun, I really wanted to give her first a name and then a lot of agency. I wanted her driving the action. I wanted her choices that get her either a happy ending or in trouble.
Yeah.
Even if her actions aren't always the best, and they're not, she's a con artist, but it also comes from a place of, it comes from good intentions that she is working to provide for her family. They're in a very difficult situation. She's struggling to support her brothers, but she also tricks people and doesn't make the best decisions in life, but at least they are her decisions. And that was a huge factor for me when I was writing this book.
Absolutely.
Completely. We can really tell that reading it. Like, she has so much. Well, I think we'll get onto a question about Nor later, but she is such a fantastic heroine. She's got so much character. And leading on from that, is there any plans for a second book? Do you plan to do any more myths, or is it the same myth? And because we need more.
So I'm so glad this podcast happened. We're recording now because I can finally announce that yes, there will be a sequel. It's official. I've signed with CamCat. I'm getting off this podcast and then gonna go work on edits and outlines.
Amazing.
And what I really love, especially with CamCat books, is I had a call with my editor and discussed that the most important thing for me is I want the, wherever the series, if it's a duology, if it's a trilogy, we're still working that out. Wherever it ends, I want it to feel very satisfying for the reader. Because I know Goldspun leaves a lot of readers wanting more,
yes.
which is good. So yes, there will be a sequel. It's in the works. I can say that we get to find out a lot more about those fairy lands, the lands that are very mysterious and dangerous. And even the map that was created, I specifically wanted the fairy lands to be, sort of that danger unknown. Here be monsters, go too far and you'll fall off the end of the world. And we get to find out more about Nor's history. So I'm super excited too.
I literally finished the book and I was trying to I was like, oh my gosh, I can't have this many pages left because there's so many questions I have about everything. I was hoping that you would say that you get a second one. So really happy about
officially
that.
There will be. Yes. Yeah, officially there'll be a second. As far as if it'll incorporate other myths or continue the Rumpelstiltskin myth, I'm considering several possibilities that may or may not include other myths. As far as the Rumpelstiltskin myth, I feel really there isn't too much more to go from the original myth, because the original myth sort of ends with the miller's daughter happily ever after, and Goldspun, a lot of that is taken sort of where happily ever after ends is sort of, kind of a third of the way into Goldspun of okay, once you get your happily ever after, then what happens, and is it that happy? So I don't think there'll be too much more from Rumpelstiltskin, but it'll be the same characters and it'll be their story.
Cool. I'm really excited for that. That's kind of what we were curious about, because we were kind of the myth is kind of semi played out without too many spoilers. But I'm really curious to see where characters are going to end up.
Yeah, I think it's quite similar to like a Court of Thorn and Roses with, because we know that was based on Sleeping Beauty. Sorry, not Sleeping Beauty, Beauty and the Beast.
Beauty and the Beast.
But that sort of ends, and you think, well, where can we go from here? And then that carries on, and it's a completely different story. So we were hoping that something similar would be suggested with Nora and her characters and everything. So we're really excited about that. That sort of leads us on to the next question, actually, is, are there any other fairy tales that you would like to retell for future books? Or
I absolutely love fairy tale retellings. And while I don't know whether or not the retellings will happen in this series, I definitely see myself doing fairy tale retellings in the future. One story I've been playing with that I actually wrote a stage play for is the Greek myth of Cupid and Psyche.
Oh my god.
Wow.
Amazing.
And I wrote a stage play for it that was sort of a modern but also fantasy rom-com-esque.
Oh, perfect.
And I've been kind of playing with the idea of what it would look like maybe as a novel. And what I love about that myth is I do just love these women who go out and are like, well, I'm going to go get shit done.
Yeah.
Sorry, I hope I can say that.
Yeah, no, you can say that. We're all good.
Okay. Because it's one of the few Greek myths that I've read. And I love mythology, but it's one of the few ones I've read where, one, a mortal falls in love with a human and things actually end happily, which is rare. And two, it's the woman who goes on the quest. She's the one who goes on the quest to win back her love, as opposed to basically just sitting and pining for him all day.
Yeah.
So that's something I love the roots of that myth.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of it is as that also leads on to our next question. It's all leading so nicely. So kind of that is a woman with her own agency, and that's what we loved so much about Noor, is that again you gave her this agency in this morally grey kind of background and way of viewing the world, but also how she has such a strong sense of morals, even though she's morally grey. Was there any inspiration behind her as a character?
That's a great question. I have an acting background, and so I have a lot of my experiences putting myself in the shoes of a character, and I found that that's been really helpful as I've become a writer, and instead of just embodying one character, now I'm trying to embody all the characters as I explain what they do. And for her, I really wanted to, the core of it was, how can she drive the action? How can she be the one to convince people she can spin straw into gold? So how can she do this rather, on the surface, this rather immoral thing, but also be a character that we can root for, that you can empathize with? And so I did a lot of brainstorming around what would convince her, what would be compelling enough for her to trick people, but in her eyes, how could she morally justify that? And so that really led me to the idea of, well, if she felt her need was greater, and in a lot of cases, family, and even though they're orphans, which I know is quite the YA trope, I did also want her brothers included. I want them to be a big part because I wanted family to be very important to her. She's not just this single entity. She does have this family, these people that love her, that she loves very dearly, that she will do anything to protect. And that need to protect family was sort of where I found her moral center, her moral compass of, these people must be protected. I must take care of them at all costs, and I will do whatever it takes. And for me, that was when I really knew I had her character.
Amazing.
I think that's what makes her so likable as well, because I think that's something people can resonate with, that you would do anything to protect your family and the people that you're close to. And I know that's one of my biggest values. I want to protect the people that I love. So that's what really drew me to her. And I thought we loved her. She was one of the highlights of the book for us. So another thing that we loved about Goldspun is that the way that clothing that the characters are wearing is described, because we are cosplayers ourselves. So that's something that we like to analyze a lot, what we can make costumes out of. And we just wondered if you had any influence for the costumes, or was there any inspiration, anything that inspired you to like write the costumes in that way?
Yes. And first I want to say, I want to see your guys' cosplay pictures. And if you ever feel like cosplaying Goldspun, please make sure to send me pictures.
Oh my god.
Oh, we've already been planning it. We've been planning it already.
This is like my dreams as a debuting author. I'm like, once people do fan art and cosplay, I'll know I've had made it.
Oh, we'll get on it then. Absolutely.
So yes, I did. I started my research as this is a fantasy world, and I specifically wanted it to be fantasy so that I could add elements without people complaining it was historically inaccurate. So it's a fantasy world, but at the same time, I did very specifically set the time reminiscent of late medieval, early Renaissance Europe. So that gave me a starting place so I could look up garments of the era and see what people wore, what it looked like. And that really helped me have those visuals when I was describing clothes, because I could be like, oh, it's going to be similar to this, but instead I'll change these elements. So that was initially very helpful because I am a very visual person. So having those visuals helped me describe the gowns that people wore, the outfits. I also in my research and in my world building, I made sure all of the noble families had their own crest and family colors. And even though it's not necessarily explicitly stated what each family's crest and colors are, it was something I could pull on whenever you saw the characters. A lot of times characters would wear the colors of their noble family, and it was a way to sort of do that through line with them, or they'd have elements of their crest. So when Nor is sort of inducted into this world of nobility, she's given this crest with spinning, with wheels representative of the spinning wheel. So then you start seeing elements of, spinning wheels and, the circle patterns into different dresses that she wears. I'm also just a big sucker for like the big ball gown scene. So we have like the big ball gown scene, and my best friend is a costume designer. So she actually designed a dress of that image, which is up on my website and on little door hangers that I made of like the big ball gown scene.
Oh my gosh.
And then the other one, when she's wearing something she really doesn't want to, I got to have a lot of fun with just going as over the top as I could of like how ridiculous, awful, funny even can I make this outfit? What would be the most hideous thing I can think of? And I had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, that one is really fun, and like her reaction to it is priceless. But then the kind of quote unquote ball gown scene that you mentioned, I feel like it is a thing in YA books, and you're always looking for it and be like, oh my god, what is the dress going to be? And when it's described in this book, I was like, oh, perfect. It is absolutely incredible. And you mentioned about the world building, and we really loved the I think the house colors do come through. I think I read that when I saw what colors they were wearing and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I have charts of it, and it's always that challenge if you want to give enough world building to really draw the readers in, but you don't want to just dump information on them, because this is not a fact book about the land of Vernalis.
I mean, in terms of world building, we really liked the representation you had within the book. Is that something that was important to you going in?
Yes, very, very much so. It's something I'm very conscientious of and trying to do my best. I wanted a diverse world of characters, because that is the world we live in, and I think representation's very important. I also want to do it as conscientiously as I can, as far as what is a way I can, as authentically as I can, represent characters who are different from myself, whether it is different ethnicity, sexual identity, and obviously ethnicity, it gets a little blurred because you're in fantasy world.
Yeah.
So, but I try to include them because otherwise I have a world full of characters that look and act like me, and that's not super exciting and kind of creepy. But at the same time, I don't want to tell stories that aren't mine to tell. So it's not necessarily, their journey into becoming that person, but that person at the same time does authentically live their life in this world.
Yeah.
And for me, it was very much being as specific as I could with these characters, not just how they are different from me or their token aspect, but what else about them fleshes them out as a character. What are their hopes and dreams? What is their backstory? What is their favorite dish? Because then to me they become more characters and less, here's the token so and so and the token so and so. And I'm always trying to listen and trying to do as well as I can. I'm not by any means perfect or beyond criticism, but just attempting to do the best I can.
Yeah, we always say here on YABasic, like, representation is so important in YA fantasy especially, but it is a fantasy world, so you don't necessarily have to write about the struggles that people of color or people of the LGBTQ community go through, but to be represented within that world and to face struggles that other people in that world are facing rather than the ones that are actually facing in real life. It's nice. It's like an escape, because that's what fantasy is. It's an escape. So we thought that it was really great to read about different types of people, but the fact that they were still included in the world, it was really great. We really enjoyed it.
They were really fleshed out, and I think because myself and Danny being a woman of color, me being a member of the LGBTQ, we just we're very hypersensitive looking for it within literature, and we thought it was handled really well, and we really liked that they were just people, not just tokens, as you say. So that was really good.
And that means a lot. Hearing that, I really appreciate that. Something I've found that I can also focus on in this world is, in addition to making them fully rounded out people, is sort of what are their struggles within this world, because it may be different than struggles in our modern world, and in our real world, but it's still, what are the prejudices against them and why. For example, the princess who has a female relationship, it's the fact that she has this relationship is not such an issue, but the fact that if she's not going to marry a guy and basically create offspring to continue the royal line, that is an issue. And so that's where the problems for her come up, as just one example of sort of, yes, there are issues, but they can be
it's a
different issues than
completely. It was really refreshing and really nice, so that was good.
Yes, we really love that. The next question that we have for you is, how did writing YA differ from writing like adult books or different types of the work that you've done before?
Sure. I haven't written any adult books yet. Again, this is my debut, which is very exciting. But I've done short stories and I have written plays. And a difference when I'm specifically writing for YA is being aware of sort of the soft rules about, not having explicit sex scenes, for example, and not having cursing is something that, while I have seen some of it in YA, what I tend to do is I tend to kind of get around that by creating my own vernacular, which works because it's a fantasy world. So they have different words that they use for things. That's a different religion. It's different, fairies have their own magic language. And so I got to kind of create my own swear words, so that way I didn't have to downplay what they say. Like if a character is really mad, they don't have to say, gosh golly.
Yeah.
But I can make up words and kind of get around that because I'm like, what does that mean? Oh, it means something really bad. I can't tell you, but it's also gibberish in English, so I get away with it. So I'm conscientious of that, and then, but beyond sort of the parameters of technically what is YA, you know, the main characters are in their teens, but it's also what I love about writing YA too is it's this great time of exploration of firsts, especially with Noor. There are so many firsts in her life. She's finally getting a chance to really decide who she wants to be based on what she wants, not just based on being in survival mode. And a lot of these new experiences and coming into your own and deciding what kind of person you want to be. And that is what I find really exciting about writing YA, and sort of this ability of to change who you are and to change the world. So it's that sort of openness and that excitement and that vulnerability that I really love about writing YA.
I bet it was really fun making up all the swear words as well, because that would be my favorite part if I wrote a YA fantasy book.
And I have, I went with I created a religion. It's a not a very complicated religion, but this is their religion is the sort of the Holy Family. So, if you're like cursing the mother or Chase is the son and the god of chaos, and you're like, my Chase is dead, as opposed to like, God damn it. Just that was kind of fun of, I had a whole Excel sheet of this is vernacular. Here are swear words.
Oh my God. You must have so many like sheets of all the different lore to try and keep up with it.
I have a lot of Excel sheets.
I can imagine. With the lore, we really thought that the Fae characters were really interesting, and that their magic was like kind of so real it was scary, and it kind of gave it this, like, there was a price to it. Was your intention going into the book to kind of make magic this kind of more formidable thing?
Yes, it was 100%. I wanted the magic to be mysterious, the magic and the fairies to be mysterious, unknown, and dangerous. And I wanted, in a bigger sense, I wanted the humans to have a lot of prejudice against the Fae, mostly because of the fear of the unknown. And I want that fear to, eventually you start to see what parts of that fear is justified and what's, prejudice based on ignorance, because it's not, I didn't want it to be clear cut as the like, oh, the Fae are the good guys or the Fae are the bad guys. But I did want it and to have a lot of the unknown mystery elements. And I wanted my magic to be very limited. I wanted it to have very specific rules, because it kind of, something that sort of bothers me in fantasy is when the magic is too powerful and can solve everything, and the main character has all of the magic. Mm-hmm. So fairies are very specifically, they're the only ones I gave magic to. And we don't see a whole lot of them in the story for the most part.
No, yeah, we don't.
And I spent a long time coming up with what the rules of their magic are, what they can do, what the limitations are. And I also did want to make the magic pretty scary. It could be used for good or for evil. And early on, with one of the freelance editor I worked with, and then later my agent, initially were like, do you really want the magic to be that dark? And I had to, that was one point where I did have to stand up and be like, yes, actually I do. One of them suggested, what if we use tears instead of blood? I'm like, that's not.
Oh no, that would have had such
that's not going to spur the kind of rumors and the fear mongering that I want it to. And I didn't, I tried to do things. I didn't want to be gratuitous with any of the danger and the blood and the, darkness of the magic. But at the same time, I wanted to be like, yeah, this is scary.
Yeah.
And you should respect it.
Yeah.
I like how Noor has this, this conflict when she meets Pell for the first time of like, oh, he can make gold. And, I'm always thinking, how can I work a situation to my advantage? And then keep coming back to but he can also kill people. This is, maybe I should leave.
And I think with the blood as well, making it blood, it's like a limit, like you said, it's a sacrifice I have to give. So it that made sense that it was blood. We really enjoyed that it was quite brutal.
Yeah, I know. I was reading it, but I was a bit behind Danny when she was reading it. And I got to one certain scene and I was like, I'm cringing so hard, but I love it so much because I was like, it's so great, like gory and horrible, but not enough that it's like horror, but enough that you're like, oh, this is real. This is serious. Like, this is taking a cost. And it was so cool.
Yeah, it was that fine line I wanted to draw of like, I wanted to make the readers uncomfortable, but not so uncomfortable you stop reading.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, it was perfect.
I will say a fun thing I've been exploring now too is what does fairy magic look like in the big picture? Because as I mentioned, we get to see a lot more of it in the next book, and so far the magic we've really seen is basically Pell's magic. So thinking about really, is his magic similar to all the fairies in the world, or is it just to him? And I won't say much more, but I do, it is something that
cool.
I'm working on
I'm excited.
now.
Yeah.
I did think that, to be honest, because when we meet another character, obviously we're going to have similar magic because of what we know about that character. But that's what I thought. Does everyone have the same type of magic, or do people have different types of magic? So it's good to know that we're going to find that out, hopefully, in the next book. But another question that we had for you that we just wanted to know is, who is your favorite character from the book?
Ooh.
Because Deadly and I definitely had our favorites, and we were like, I wonder if you had your favorite when you were writing.
I'd say Nora's probably my favorite. I was in her head the most. I feel like she gets to oscillate so much between, doing what would be right for perhaps the country versus what's right for her.
Yeah.
So I love her. She's very special to me, especially because she's not perfect. She doesn't, wind up realizing that she is somehow this chosen one, but has to scrape by regardless. I will say that to the character I think you were just mentioning, he was probably the most fun to write, just because he's so wicked that he came out in later edits and later drafts, and it was just a lot of fun to
evil.
Throw into this just maniacal character that you're like, ooh. And even he has strong motives. He's not, being evil or, just for the sake of it. He's very clearly trying to get his own goals, but it was just so delightfully he just so delightfully doesn't care what other, isn't trying to make anyone else happy.
Yeah, quite similar to the Darkling, like we mentioned earlier.
So who are your guys' favorite characters?
Obviously Casper. Hello.
Yeah, I really loved Casper. We both did, I think, and we both really loved Nor. I also really liked
Flora. Was really lovely.
Flora, of course. Yeah, she was. I really loved her. I really loved her character and how kind she was and accepting. I thought her character was really great. But
we both see a lot of character from the brothers. Like they all have such distinct personalities, like between them, and interests. And I thought that was really great to see how they would progress.
Yeah, I had to rewrite. I rewrote them several times because at first I was trying to include too many myths, and so I had 6 brothers of hers, and I'm this is too many to keep track of. And with Casper, it was really fun. It was something my editor from the publishing company suggested, of adding the prologue from his point of view, which I thought was a really fun thing for me to write, since I love writing from Nora's point of view, but it was exciting to get to see, what his life is like.
Yeah, I think that's what I love. Yeah, I think that's what I loved about Casper, is that we got that prologue and then we saw his development from being what he was in the prologue to what he was when he met Nora. And I think that's what made him really likable. So that's why we liked him. I think I was, when I was reading the book, because like Deadly said, she was behind me when we were reading, and I was like, Deadly, I'm really worried that you're gonna not like the same character that I like, and that we're gonna have to disagree on it. But you at the end, you were like, "Oh, I love Casper." I thought, "Oh, thank God."
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we tend. I tend to love a bad boy, but I just think the prince. He's so real. I don't know. He's very. A lot of the times, we often talk about kind of how love interests can be very one-dimensional. But he's his own character with interests and kind of
Yeah.
motivations. So you're like, oh, I actually want to know where his character's going as well. Yeah, but
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, go
Oh,
ahead. No,
I was
go
just
ahead.
to say he was a lot of fun to write too, because in the original myth, it's you're given so little about the king character. He's so flat, and he's to me he's the villain in the original myth. You know, just telling this poor girl of like, do all this or I'll kill you. And so it was really fun fleshing out Casper as to why would he tell someone that, and also, you know, I really wanted to put him off balance as, you know, the future king, because in the original he's king, and that's all there is to it. So in this one, I thought, how can I really put him off balance, which I did by making him, you know, he's very dedicated to his country, to his people, but at the same time, he was, being the younger son, he was unprepared to be king. He never ever thought that he'd become king, and now suddenly, oh, yep, you're gonna become king soon. And so he's like, oh, I have to look like I know what I'm doing. I have to look like a leader, and I care about my country, but I also am feeling really unprepared for this. So I think he has a lot of maybe some imposter syndrome there.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's fun to hear who's like Team Pell, Team Casper.
I know it is. We typically we don't really like love triangles, but this one, Danny literally messaged me and she was like, I think I like love triangles.
No, I literally was like, I really like this one, Deadly. Like, I'm glad that I really like it.
I've seen them done well, and I've seen them done less well. For me at least, I think what helped here is that they're not, you know, Pell and Casper are in such different worlds. They're not, especially Casper, who doesn't even know about Pell. They're not, you know, directly competing against each other, so you don't just get that rivalry for her attention, but it's, you know, trying to genuinely
it's all her choice,
get her attention.
Not,
and Casper's also, you know, trying to rebuild his country, and so it's not all about the love triangle, even though it is there.
Yeah. I think we also another thing that we don't like about the love triangles is that we always knew who the protagonist was going to pick, but in this one I don't think I could tell the whole way through. I was like, I have no idea who she's going to go for in the end, which was really exciting. It just made me excited to read it. So that's something else that we really enjoyed.
Yeah, I mean, I was very conflicted too for a long time when I was drafting and when I was thinking what was going to happen. And I'm, you know, as you could tell from earlier, also very much drawn to sort of the bad boy character and trying to make Casper appealing, but not sort of this, you know, just a pure knight in shining armor character was a lot of fun. And it does become, you know, if I'm confused for a while, Nora's also going to be confused.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. We definitely felt that, and we're with you in the confusion. So if you were a character in the world of Goldspan, who would you want to be? Would you want to be a fae, a royal, a villager? Like, what's the vibe you want?
I would want to be a fae because I love the idea of being some magical, mysterious character.
Yeah.
They're the only ones that have magic. I love magic.
Yeah.
So I would definitely go for fae.
That's a good answer. I think I would same. Even though they're a bit, I like them because they feel organic. They're very. It's not like pretty fairy. It's like that is a fae creature. And especially with characters we meet later on who are fae, they're so glamorous and entertaining and interesting. And I'm like, I need more.
Yeah, it was fun kind of being like, In this world, I just had to, in this book, I just had to focus on a few of the key Fae characters. So with the next book, it's really starting to be like, okay, you got to say, ooh, they're mysterious before. Now what happens when you're in their world, and can't just be like, ooh, mysterious, but like, what does their world look like? What does it look like when you peel back the curtain, so to speak?
Oh my gosh.
Exciting. The next question we have is more of like another book like question, like a trivia question that we just want to know about you. And it's, if you could go to dinner with any author from any time, who would it be and why?
Oscar Wilde, hands down. Wait, does it have to be a living author?
No.
Okay. I adore Oscar Wilde. I think his writing is most of his writing is so satirical, so witty, so smart. I actually, my first play that actually got to premiere at the Hollywood Fringe Festival a few years back was an imagining sort of kind of a fantasy-esque, like a dark modern fantasy of what it would be like if Oscar Wilde had met Dorian Gray.
Oh my God.
But it was like Oscar Wilde at the end of his life. So he'd already been to prison. He was kind of a broken person at that point, and reminiscing about his life. And what I did is I took a lot of his quotes, either from his life, from his work, and inserted them into my play as though they were part of the dialogue. Wow. To really get authentic feel of how he'd speak, how he'd joke, which was funny and also dark and heartbreaking. And so people would be like, oh my gosh, that was so, such good lines. I'm like, yeah, I stole half of it.
Oscar Wilde would be proud of that, I feel.
Yeah. Yeah, I just love the way he writes, and I just love how I love witty writing. And one thing I love is when people tell me they thought, scenes that I write are witty or make them laugh or are clever, because to me, I love that kind of banter, and it's not something that can really be planned. Like when I'm writing an outline, I'm writing, big plot points. I'm not writing clever one-liner here.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah, I feel very similar about Jane Austen. Like, I wish if I met her, she'd just be the best person to talk to, because her books are so funny. Like, when I read them, I'm just like, this is hilarious. And she was so like before her time. It would just be the best to like be able to talk to them and see what they were like, and just like sit and have like tea and just talk. I completely understand.
I feel like a dinner party with Oscar Wilde, a high tea with Jane Austen.
Yeah, perfect.
Fantastic.
That would be the dream. So this is kind of towards the end of the interview, kind of where we can find you on socials, where we can buy your book, any last things you want to say, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so my site, brandiejune.com, and it's Brandie with an IE, has the links to all my socials, which are pretty much all Brandie June, and on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. So you can follow me on any of those. Goldspun is available pretty much anywhere books are sold online. And I also have links for that on my site. I am doing a special promotion through the end of June, the end of this month, that anyone who either buys the book or even requests it from the library, I will send them some book swag. And I'm offering that internationally, just to kind of help celebrate Goldspun coming out. So I have a form on my site that people can fill out, and I'll send them some goodies.
Amazing.
And I'm was so delighted to be able to be on here today and chat books with you guys.
It's been so much fun. Thank you for being on. It's been an honor, and we absolutely adore your book. So
it was great. Yeah, we're so thankful that you reached out and that you wanted to come on to YABasic. And yeah, we just really loved Goldspun. We thought it was fantastic. The epitome of YA fantasy, and yeah, we couldn't recommend it enough.
Oh, thank you.
So that was our interview with Brandie June. Oh my goodness.
Wow, what an interview for a first ever interview. I am so glad that we're getting a second book. If
Yes.
this isn't incentive enough to go and buy the first one and finish it before the second one comes out, I don't know what is.
Yeah, get on it. Oh my gosh. And she was so, I absolutely loved how eloquent she was about her characters and her process, and it was just really inspiring to hear an author so passionate about her project and her work.
Yeah, and she just had an answer for all of our questions. She was great. I really enjoyed talking to Brandie. She was such a ray of sunshine. If you should definitely check out her TikTok as well. I'm obsessed.
It's
every day.
amazing.
I'm like, Brandie,
Brandie,
TikToks.
She's so cute. We love her.
Yes, if you guys are interested in reading Goldspun, though, we have a very exciting announcement.
Yes.
If you head over to our Instagram, we are going to be giving away 2 copies of Goldspun with signed book plates, with some cute little Goldspun merch in there as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, go over to at YABasic podcast on Instagram, and yeah, we'll be announcing the giveaway soon. So definitely make sure you enter when it's up. We'll post all of the details in the description.
Yeah, and we wish you luck on that quest, and we will see you next time. But until then, happy reading.
Yes, happy reading, guys.
Bye.
Bye.